You have spent your entire life looking up at the sky, believing it is too vast to touch, too distant to belong to you. You think freedom is somewhere far away, meaning is hidden in the future, and fulfillment will arrive when conditions improve. But what if the sky is not above you at all? What if it has always been waiting quietly within your grasp, ready to be held the moment you stop reaching outward and learn to turn inward? The sky has always symbolized what appears unreachable, while the palm represents what you believe is small and limited. This contrast exists only in perception, not in reality. The moment awareness deepens, the idea of limitation begins to dissolve. What once felt distant and overwhelming starts to feel intimate and immediate, not because the sky has changed, but because your sense of self has expanded beyond narrow definitions. Human beings suffer not because life is too vast, but because they approach it with a contracted inner state. When awareness is confined to thought, identity and memory, even simple situations feel heavy. As awareness widens, life no longer presses against you. The same world that once felt unmanageable becomes spacious, and possibility reveals itself without effort or struggle. The palm does not need to grow to hold the sky. It needs clarity and steadiness. Inner chaos shrinks perception, while inner stillness enlarges experience. When attention is no longer scattered, life aligns itself naturally. Control is replaced by clarity and effort gives way to balance, allowing the vastness of existence to be experienced without fear. Awareness that is rooted in the present moment removes the illusion of separation. Past and future lose their grip and life is no longer fragmented into hopes and regrets. In this state, the infinite is not an idea but a lived reality. The mind becomes a tool rather than a master, and perception becomes direct rather than distorted. To hold the sky in your palm is to realize that completeness has never been missing. The boundaries that once defined you were mental constructions, not truths. When these boundaries soften, life flows through you instead of confronting you. What once felt impossible becomes natural, and the vastness you sought outside reveals itself as your own inner dimension. Human suffering begins the moment life is evaluated through external markers such as success, status, recognition, or possession. When worth is calculated by outcomes, the inner state becomes secondary and experience is constantly postponed. Life stops being lived and starts being measured, creating a quiet dissatisfaction that no achievement can permanently erase. External achievements are unstable by nature because they depend on comparison, approval, and circumstances beyond one's control. What feels fulfilling today quickly becomes insufficient tomorrow. This endless pursuit conditions the mind to believe that fulfillment is always elsewhere, never here and never now. As a result, even moments of success carry anxiety rather than ease. Inner experience, when ignored, does not disappear. It expresses itself as restlessness, frustration or emptiness. The mind becomes noisy, emotions lose balance and clarity weakens. Without inner alignment, achievements turn into burdens, responsibilities feel heavy, and life itself starts to feel resistant rather than supportive. When attention shifts inward, experience gains depth regardless of outer conditions. Joy, peace and stability arise not because circumstances are perfect, but because perception is no longer distorted by constant craving. Inner experience does not depend on comparison, so it creates a sense of wholeness that remains steady even as situations change. A life rooted in inner experience is not inactive or detached, it is precise and intelligent. Action becomes an expression rather than a compensation. When the inner state is complete, achievement no longer defines worth and success no longer dictates happiness. Life is then lived as it unfolds, not judged by what it produces. Control over life is not something that comes from trying to bend the world to your will. The more you push, force, or manipulate external circumstances, the more resistance and unpredictability you encounter. True control is not about shaping the outside, it is about understanding and mastering your inner world. The mind, when disciplined, becomes a tool for clarity rather than a source of distraction and confusion. Every reaction, every impulse, and every habit forms the framework through which life is experienced. When attention is scattered and responses are automatic, life feels chaotic and beyond control. But when one observes the mind without being entangled in its patterns, the energy that once fueled frustration and confusion transforms into awareness and choice. Mastery begins with noticing the impulses that drive behavior before they dictate action. Response is the true measure of power, not reaction. Reacting is automatic, driven by past conditioning and immediate stimuli, while responding requires presence, observation, and choice. By cultivating the ability to pause and create space between stimulus and action, life stops feeling reactive and starts feeling guided. Control arises not from changing the outside, but from refining the quality of attention within. Mastering attention is a skill that must be practiced consistently. It demands focus, patience, and the willingness to observe without judgment. When attention is sharp and deliberate, distractions lose their grip and clarity of thought and perception emerge. Decisions become precise, actions become effective, and the flow of life becomes smoother because the mind is no longer pulled in every direction. Ultimately, the measure of control is not in the external outcomes achieved, but in the steadiness of the inner state. Circumstances may remain unpredictable, but a disciplined mind creates consistency where chaos once reigned. Life is no longer a series of reactions to events, but a field where awareness, choice, and mastery determine how experience is lived and how energy is expressed. When the mind ceases its constant pursuit of thoughts, a profound transformation begins to take place. The endless chatter and compulsive need to analyze, judge, or plan create a sense of confinement, as if the mind is trapped in a small, crowded room. Every thought pulls attention outward or backward, preventing awareness from fully inhabiting the present. When this compulsive momentum slows, the mind no longer confines experience to noise and distraction. The moment the mind stops chasing, a space of clarity emerges. It is not created by effort or intention, but by the natural settling of the restless mind. In this space, perception becomes direct and unfiltered. Experiences are no longer colored by the overlay of constant commentary, and life begins to be sensed rather than interpreted. The vastness that was always present becomes visible because the mental turbulence that obscured it has quieted. This space is not emptiness, but presence. It carries a depth that allows life to be felt fully, moment by moment. Without the relentless pursuit of thoughts, emotions and sensations can be observed without attachment or fear. Awareness stretches beyond the habitual limits of thinking and opens a field where creativity, insight, and understanding naturally emerge. The mind becomes a witness, clear and attentive, rather than a prisoner of its own compulsions. Within this clarity, a sense of freedom arises. The compulsive drive to control, predict, or grasp life diminishes because the mind no longer identifies with every passing thought. Decisions become more precise, actions more deliberate, and responses more intelligent. Life no longer feels fragmented or overwhelming. Instead, it flows through a field of inner spaciousness that was always available but previously unnoticed. The vast sense of space that opens within is both power and refuge. It allows one to navigate challenges without being consumed by them, to engage fully without being entangled, and to experience life without constant interference from mental noise. In this space, the infinite is no longer an abstract idea but a tangible dimension of inner experience, accessible the moment the mind stops compulsively chasing and simply rests in awareness. Freedom does not come from avoiding life or shirking responsibilities. Running away may give the illusion of relief for a moment, but the pressure of unfinished duties, unresolved emotions, and unfulfilled commitments follows relentlessly. True freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the mastery of how one carries it. When the weight of life is borne consciously, it transforms from a burden into a source of strength. Engagement with life requires clarity and presence. When actions are performed with awareness, they cease to create internal conflict. Responsibilities, whether personal, professional or social, are no longer chains that bind, but instruments that refine attention and intention. Each act performed with full presence becomes an opportunity to expand consciousness rather than an obligation to endure. Psychological burden arises from the stories and judgments the mind attaches to every responsibility. It is not the task itself, but the mental interpretation that creates stress and resistance. By observing responsibilities without projecting fear, expectation, or resentment onto them, the mind remains calm and balanced. The same actions that once felt heavy now flow with a sense of purpose and clarity. Freedom emerges in the space between action and reaction. It is the ability to remain undisturbed by outcomes, criticism, or the unpredictability of circumstances. Responsibility, when met with equanimity, does not limit life but anchors it in the present. The mind stops fluctuating between avoidance and anxiety and instead operates from a place of steadiness and power. Living without psychological burden requires discipline and awareness. It demands that the mind be present with every choice, every task, and every interaction. When life is fully engaged in this manner, freedom is no longer an abstract ideal or distant goal. It becomes the lived reality of each moment, a clarity that allows one to navigate the challenges of existence without being trapped by them. The present moment is where life truly unfolds, unfiltered and immediate. The mind often clings to the past, replaying memories with attachment or regret, or races toward the future, chasing hopes and fears. In doing so, it misses the reality of what is happening right now. The infinite, the vastness of existence cannot be grasped in thought because thought is always limited, bound by time and habit. Only in full presence can the limitless be experienced directly. When attention is rooted in the now, perception becomes sharper and more alive. The distractions of memory and anticipation fall away, revealing the richness of experience that was always available but hidden behind mental noise. Every sound, every sensation, every breath becomes a portal into the vastness of life. Presence transforms ordinary moments into gateways of clarity, connection and depth that the restless mind cannot fabricate. The past and the future are constructs of imagination. They have no independent existence outside of the stories we tell ourselves. The mind holds onto the past with longing or guilt and projects into the future with hope or fear, creating a continuous cycle of tension. This cycle obscures the immediacy of life, making it feel smaller, constrained and unreachable. The infinite can only be touched when these mental projections are recognized for what they are and allowed to rest. Full immersion in the present does not require withdrawal from action or responsibility. On the contrary, it brings intensity and clarity to every choice and interaction. Actions performed with complete awareness are more effective, more precise and more harmonious. The mind stops reacting automatically and begins to respond intelligently, aligned with the natural flow of life. In this alignment, the infinite is not a distant concept but a tangible experience in every moment. Experiencing the infinite in the present is a process of opening and surrendering. It demands that the mind release its habit of controlling, labeling and measuring life. As mental turbulence subsides, space emerges where boundless awareness can reside. Life no longer feels fragmented or fleeting, and the vastness that once seemed unreachable becomes a living reality, accessible with every breath and every moment of conscious attention. True power is not measured by how much one can control the world, but by the steadiness one maintains within. Chaos is an inevitable part of life. Storms arise, circumstances shift unpredictably, and people act in ways beyond your influence. Strength that depends on external stability is fragile, collapsing at the first sign of disturbance. Real power is rooted in the inner landscape, where clarity and calm are cultivated independently of what happens outside. When the mind is calm, perception sharpens. Confusion and fear distort reality, making problems appear larger than they are. A steady mind sees clearly, distinguishing between what requires action and what does not. Decisions emerge from awareness rather than reaction, and each step taken is precise, effective and in harmony with the flow of life. Clarity in the midst of chaos transforms apparent obstacles into manageable challenges. Emotional composure is the foundation of true power. When emotions dominate, they cloud judgment and trigger impulsive actions that amplify chaos. By observing emotions without being consumed by them, the mind maintains balance. Anger, fear, and anxiety no longer dictate behavior, and the individual becomes a center of calm around which the world can settle. This composure is not suppression, it is mastery of attention and response. True power also arises from understanding impermanence. Situations, outcomes, and circumstances are transient. Clinging to stability or resisting change creates unnecessary suffering and drains energy. Recognizing that everything flows allows the mind to remain unaffected by turbulence. Power lies in moving with life, not in resisting it, in being present rather than projecting control over what is uncontrollable. The calm and clarity cultivated within become a source of influence far greater than force or authority. People are drawn to steadiness, and situations resolve more easily when approached with composure. Life is no longer experienced as a series of crises, but as a field where presence, awareness and disciplined attention determine how energy is expressed. True power is not about dominance, but about mastery of oneself in the eye of the storm. When the body, mind and emotions are misaligned, life feels heavy, chaotic and fragmented. Energy is scattered in multiple directions, leaving the individual exhausted and confused. Thoughts pull in one way while emotions pull in another, and the body responds to neither coherently. This disconnection creates tension, frustration, and a constant sense of being out of control, as though life is happening to you rather than through you. Alignment begins with awareness. Observing the patterns of the mind, the impulses of the body, and the fluctuations of emotions allows one to recognize where dissonance exists. The mind often chases distractions, the body resists, and emotions fluctuate uncontrollably. By bringing conscious attention to these layers, it becomes possible to integrate them into a single cohesive experience where each aspect supports the others rather than working against them. When alignment is achieved, energy flows effortlessly. Actions no longer feel forced and decisions arise from clarity rather than confusion. The body moves in rhythm with the mind and emotions become a source of intelligence rather than instability. Life begins to unfold naturally, without the constant friction created by inner resistance, and experiences feel fuller, richer and more meaningful. Integration of body, mind and emotions also enhances perception. The mind is no longer clouded by restlessness, the body is no longer burdened by tension, and emotions no longer distort reality. This clarity allows one to respond to challenges effectively, make decisions with confidence, and act in ways that are harmonious with both circumstances and inner intent. The entire system operates as a unified whole, where every thought, feeling, and movement contributes to conscious living. The effortless flow that emerges from this alignment transforms life from a series of struggles into a seamless experience of presence and effectiveness. Fragmentation dissolves and the individual moves with precision, awareness and balance. Challenges no longer overwhelm, opportunities are recognized with clarity, and life itself becomes an expression of intelligence, harmony, and power that arises from within rather than being imposed from without. Holding the sky begins with the recognition that the sense of lack is an illusion created by the mind. From birth, people are conditioned to believe that fulfillment lies in acquiring, achieving, or becoming something outside themselves. This endless striving creates a perception of emptiness, as if life itself is always incomplete. Yet the truth is that completeness has never been missing. It is the very ground from which life arises, the silent foundation that supports every thought, emotion, and experience. The mind struggles to see this completeness because it measures life in fragments. Success, failure, gain, and loss are all treated as markers of worth, as if the whole of existence depends on outcomes. This fragmented perspective obscures the natural wholeness that is ever present. When the mind learns to stop chasing what it believes is missing, it begins to sense the vastness within, a vastness that has no beginning, end, or condition. Holding the sky also means releasing attachment to external validation. People often look outward to confirm their value or seek fulfillment through possessions, relationships, or status. Each of these can offer temporary satisfaction, but none can touch the deep completeness that resides inside. When attention turns inward, the false boundaries dissolve and a natural sense of sufficiency arises. The inner state becomes independent of circumstances, and the sense of fullness is constant, unshaken by change. Completeness is not passive or stagnant, it is dynamic and alive. When one realizes that nothing essential is missing, action becomes effortless and intelligent. Choices are no longer driven by fear, desire, or compulsion, but flow naturally from clarity. Energy is no longer scattered in pursuit of something outside, but becomes available for conscious creation, meaningful engagement, and deeper experience. Life itself becomes an expression of fullness rather than a quest to fill a void. The moment this realization anchors in awareness, life transforms. The sky that once seemed distant is now grasped effortlessly because the mind no longer imposes limitation. There is no need to chase, no pressure to attain, and no fear of loss. Holding the sky in the palm is the understanding that wholeness is inherent, constant, and untouched by external fluctuations. Existence is experienced as complete, and every moment is infused with the freedom and power that come from knowing nothing essential is ever missing. When inner boundaries dissolve, the sense of separation that has long defined experience begins to fade. The divisions created by judgment, comparison, and fear no longer dictate perception, and life is no longer seen as a series of obstacles to overcome. Every moment becomes an opportunity to engage fully rather than defend or protect. And the resistance that once drained energy simply falls away. The mind stops creating unnecessary walls and space emerges for awareness to expand. Without these boundaries, life stops being a struggle for control or validation. Decisions are no longer driven by anxiety, attachment, or the need to manipulate outcomes. Instead, They arise from clarity, intuition, and alignment with what is unfolding naturally. Action becomes effortless, not because the world changes, but because the individual no longer reacts compulsively to every circumstance. The energy once tied up in resistance is now available for conscious participation. Emotions are no longer experienced as disruptions or disturbances when boundaries dissolve. Fear, anger, and desire lose their compulsive power and become signals rather than masters. The mind observes them without being pulled into their patterns, and responses are measured and deliberate. This transformation creates a sense of inner freedom where life flows rather than being fought against, and engagement becomes a choice rooted in presence rather than habit. Relationships and interactions also shift in subtle but profound ways. Without rigid inner walls, connection becomes more authentic, compassionate, and responsive. The need to defend identity or control others diminishes, and collaboration and understanding naturally emerge. Life is no longer a battleground, but a field where communication and action are guided by awareness, clarity, and a deeper understanding of interdependence. The dissolution of inner boundaries leads to a continuous state of conscious participation. Life ceases to be experienced as a series of challenges or conflicts and becomes a dynamic interplay between awareness, intention, and action. Energy flows naturally, experiences are more vivid and meaningful, and the individual moves through the world with a sense of presence, power, and alignment that arises not from control over circumstances, but from mastery over the inner landscape.